I've talked before about how identity politics is a very dangerous and just quite frankly dumb thing to go by. And for those that aren't familiar with what I'm talking about, basically the idea that a minority or a person of color, a woman, anything like that, somebody who is marginalized generally in society and by systemic oppression, you just have to inherently believe what they say or listen to them or what have you just because of their identity. Because conservatives love to weaponize that mentality, where we have people like I've talked before about, Candace Owens, there's Blair White, there's a whole bunch of people, and now I have come across Patience Zena. Now, I will absolutely be talking about another person similar to this person before, but once again, we have to get the obvious out of the way because these things are important. There's a reason for this kind of... Now, this woman isn't on Daily Wire or anything like that, but still have to discuss this and get them out of the way. Conventionally attractive black woman. Conventionally attractive woman, person of color. These key three things are very important. As we go through her channel, and I may very well be covering other videos of her, like hookup culture is bad for the boys too, and the girls are getting tired of hookup culture, yada, yada, yada. Why does Hollywood keep doing this? We kind of talked about this recently. I had a video on it if you want to check it out, which I'll have as a card somewhere around here, wherever the card goes. But let's discuss this video. Our society is full of hypocrites. We can see from the thumbnail, we have Jordan Peterson crying. Jordan Peterson went on a interview show a while ago, and, well, we'll just get into it as we get into the video.
Hello, welcome back to my channel. Today's topic is Jordan Peterson's interview with Piers Morgan. So recently Jordan Peterson had an interview with Piers Morgan, and this is what happened.
Quickly, the film director Olivia Wilde has a new movie out, which she says is based on you, this insane man, this pseudo-intellectual hero to the incel community. Incel being these weirdo loner men who are despicable in many ways. Is that you? Are you the intellectual hero to these people?
Sure. Why not? People have been after me for a long time because I've been speaking to disaffected young men. What a terrible thing to do that is.
Just to be clear, people are not after him because he's speaking to disaffected young men. I try to do that, and I hope that I am successful in doing that, in helping other men to address issues that they're dealing with, and some I'm even dealing with as well. I'm in this with you guys. But the issue that people have with Jordan Peterson is not that he tries to help young men. I talked about How to Beast earlier, and I've talked about some other content creators that I really like, one of them being a very good friend of mine, and different things like that. I've talked about these people. And these are people who are genuinely and generally trying to help disaffected young men. That isn't really what Jordan Peterson's doing. The issue people have with Jordan Peterson is not his help toward men, but when he does things like this. Let me think about it here. Okay. I don't feel like going into any of these actual videos right now, but he would basically go on these tirades. In fact, this might actually... Yes, okay, this was one of them, where he cries. He gives these speeches where he cries about this stuff. And there's nothing wrong with crying in and of itself. I do want to make that perfectly clear. However, what he does, and I had this pointed out to a friend of mine a couple years ago, I talked before about how I deconstructed my religious views. One of the things that I was holding on to, or that I was kind of using to hold on to my religious views for a while, was his, let's see if I can find them here. Yeah, series. He had a whole series, a whole entire playlist, and I watched a bunch of these. I listened to them more specifically, but he had these lectures where he went on for hours and hours just talking about religion and biblical ideology and stuff, and how important it is to culture and all these different things. And for me, this was kind of a last-ditch effort to rationalize and intellectualize my religious beliefs. But I found that, for one, they didn't hold up, and a friend of mine pointed out to me that the whole thing that he got famous for from the Bill C-16 incident was, to put it best, a misinterpretation of the bill. Basically, all that Bill 16 was doing was making it a protected class, making trans people a protected class. It wasn't making it where if you misgender somebody, you can be locked up and thrown in jail. That wasn't the idea. That wasn't what was happening, and that isn't what's happening. However, that's what Jordan Peterson got famous for. And in fact, you'll have things. This is a very common conservative talking point, and this is one in which Jordan Peterson did himself. He was, and by the way, he was a teacher, he was a professor, but he wasn't a medical doctor or anything like that. Yes, he's a doctor, and this will happen a lot too. You'll have doctors who will disagree with trans-affirming ideology and ideas and things of that nature, and they'll disagree, and the same thing will happen with global warming denialists and people like that, and those that are pro-life and all these different things, where there'll be a doctor of some sort, and people will go and say, oh, well, they're a doctor, and they disagree, with everything. It's like, okay, but what are they a doctor of? Just because you're a doctor. Jordan Peterson was a professor in psychiatry and psychology, or at least one of the two. He wasn't a medical doctor. He didn't know anything about these kind of situations. But because he was a doctor that started the conservative narrative, this was the kind of thing that happened to him, right? So this meme, this comic is very accurate, right? We're dropping your column. Many readers think you're just too extreme. You have this person saying, oh, I'm being silenced. So he goes to events where he speaks and says, I have been silenced. He's in the newspaper saying, I have been silenced. And he's on Fox News. Here with his new book, I Have Been Silenced. Guy's saying, I've been silenced. If you can't tell what this is trying to say, it's very simply that people will go on these, spout these narratives and say that they're being silenced, they're being canceled, any of this stuff, when they're being given a ton of publicity for their cancellation, for their silence, for whatever it might be. They're not being silenced, they had a boost in their career. So, the issue, though, that people have, and by the way, I'm not actually sure. What? No, don't. Oh, I spelled that wrong. Okay, so this is the character that's basically supposed to be the Jordan Peterson type of guy in Don't Worry, Darling, which I don't know anything about this movie except the name. I know that Harry Styles and Florence Pugh, or Poe, or however you pronounce that, I know that they star in it. And that's all I know. But what I do know is that a parody of a character, of a mainstream character, is nothing new. And if that's what he's getting upset about here, like, let's do... There was also this thing where Red Skull from the Captain America Marvel comics was depicted like Jordan Peterson as well. Jordan Peterson has 2 books, 12 Rules for Life and 12 More Rules for Life. The Red Skull, he's being depicted 10 Rules for Life. He talks about chaos and order. He talks about Carl Jr. He talks about the feminist trap, all these different things, right? Jordan Peterson likes to talk about people like Jung and Nietzsche and all these different, philosophers and stuff like that. And great, okay, cool. But a popular figure being parodied in some way is nothing new. It happens to celebrities who are in the entertainment industry. It happens to political figures. It happens to everybody. If that's what he's upset about, and it seems to be, it's nothing worth, crying about.
I thought the marginalized were supposed to have a voice.
It's making you emotional. Talk about that.
Well, God, it's very difficult to understand how demoralized people are. And certainly many young men are in that category. And you get these casual insults, these incels. What does it mean? It's like, well, these men, they don't know how to make themselves attractive to women who are very picky, and good for them. Women, be picky. That's your gift, man. Demand high standards from your men. Fair enough. But all these men who are alienated, it's like they're lonesome and they don't know what to do.
So since then, social media has taken it upon themselves to mock and to tease Jordan Peterson for the fact that he cried during this interview. And I feel like this just emphasizes...
I hate how quiet this is, by the way.
...the hypocrisy that exists within our society. People will mock and tease Jordan Peterson for crying, and I'll share with you some of the comments that people said on Twitter. Obviously it was on Twitter, where else? So one user said, "Does Jordan Peterson take estrogen? I can't imagine someone who purports to have so much testosterone crying this often scientifically." Someone else said, "Is anyone else sick of seeing Jordan Peterson crying on TV every day? It's ridiculous. The right wing thinks he's an expert in mental health. This guy is nuts." And then one other user said, "I'll tell you something that's not so funny. Right now, Jordan Peterson is at home crying like a little girl." Now, naturally, you'd understand why I found this to be very confusing, because we're also a society that simultaneously says things like this.
Because I just think this toxic masculinity that,
Jesus.
this stiff upper lip is really damaging. What are we telling boys? And then when you look at rates, it's become an epidemic. This is dangerous discourse, really, I would say.
All it does is just highlight the hypocrisy that exists within our society. People will preach all day about how bad toxic masculinity is and how men should be more in touch with their emotions and should be more in touch with their sensitive side. But because you disagree with a man's politics, you think he's free game for you to mock and ridicule and call him a little girl, or say that you think he's taking estrogen. And so basically reinforcing the same gender stereotypes that you claim to be working so hard to fight against. But
okay, she's not going to shut up. I wanted her to stop for a second so I could address something. So I want to address a few things here. First of all, is there actually an issue that Jordan Peterson can address as far as men being disaffected, men feeling lonely and like they can't get a partner, all these different things? Are there issues that men typically have with finding partners, especially these days? Yes, absolutely. A lot of it, though, A lot of it, though, quite frankly, is our own fault. When I was younger, I used to be a lot more picky about what I wanted from a partner. And as I've gotten older, I'm 25 now, I've become less and less picky. I've essentially decided to live by a mentality of be really open-minded short term and be pickier long term. As in, be open-minded as far as like who I'll go on a date with, who I might hook up with, all those different things. But as far as being with someone long term, that's when you can get picky, when you start to narrow down kind of, okay, I'm dating these multiple people, now I kind of have to choose or what have you, that kind of thing, right? And there's nothing wrong with having standards for men or women or non-binary people, whatever, right? There's nothing wrong with standards and preferences and all that good stuff. That's valid. And Jordan even said, that's good for women for being picky. I think a lot of times, though, this idea that women are too picky just isn't true, because the reality is a lot of men, and I mean a lot of men, don't even do things like practice basic hygiene, like brushing your teeth, washing your hair, taking a shower, combing your hair, all these different things. And the reality is this: a lot of the men that complain about not having a partner, and I get this because I've been there. I understand. A lot of men that complain about this, oh, I can't get a girlfriend, I can't get laid, I can't whatever, are passing up opportunities with women that they deem less attractive. The reality is, if you want to be with somebody who you deem as attractive, you need to be as attractive as they are as well. You want to be compatible in general, but if you're trying to get with somebody who is conventionally attractive and you aren't conventionally attractive, you got to work on that. It's one of the many reasons why I, changed up my appearance in general and have for a good while been dieting and working out to get into better shape. I'll have videos and such where I discuss these kind of things more specifically in the future too. But if you want to be with somebody who's attractive, you yourself need to be attractive. And that doesn't just mean looks, although that does definitely play a part in it. But yes, it's true that there are issues men are going through, and men do need legitimate help. But people like Jordan Peterson, past the very basic clean your room idea, don't really provide it. Because to be perfectly clear, his narrative of clean your room and take a shower, those are very important things to do. There's this idea of, doing a little bit at a time of things. And what it does is it helps you build up habits of doing things like taking care of yourself and your space that you live in and things of that nature. That's all valid. That's all good. But what people have an issue with Jordan Peterson is his great replacement rhetoric, his anti-woman rhetoric, his fear-mongering. That's what people have an issue with. They don't have an issue with the fact that he's trying to help men. That's not the issue at all. But I do want to be clear as well. The people making those comments too of like, oh, look at him crying like a little, people that are like, oh, he's such a little bitch or something like that. And if these are progressive people, that's not progressive. That's not a good thing to do. And I've talked about optics before, and I'll talk about optics again. Yes, that's bad optically, but I would argue it's just bad in general because it's working to reinforce harmful stereotypes. Like men can't cry and things like that. Or we say we want men to be more emotional, but the second they open up, we make fun of them. And that gives great fuel to people like this.
This isn't a surprise to me because I've seen this kind of thing over and over again. These are the same people who will say things like, we need to uplift the voices of black women, unless, of course, that black woman is someone like Candace Owens.
Yep. And just listen to this.
All all about screaming about representation and how we need to have black voices, unless those black voices are conservative. Then you can call them a coon and Uncle Tom and every racial slur you want to, because they disagree with your politics.
So yes, I recently put out a video dissecting a video of a woman who was very anti-feminist, and it was one of those why I left feminism kind of things. And I got a comment. I'm not going to single them out or anything because, I do not condone harassment of any kind. But I got a comment where this person had said, it was women believe, or feminists believe women. Women disagrees with feminism. Feminists, accept that one. It's like, okay, listen, I want to point this out because this is why we don't do identity politics. Yeah, Candace Owens is not good for black people in general. I mean, she was the one that put the whole he was no angel thing with George Floyd. I remember back in 2020, my mom showed me something about Candace Owens. She was like, oh, this George Floyd guy, he's not really any good. And, I've been listening to this Candace Owens person talking about this. So I did my research. I looked into who Candace Owens was and stuff like that. And I realized, yeah, this isn't a reliable source. This isn't. Conservatives love to take these people who are part of a marginalized group and say, hey, we like that you're, saying things in line with what we're trying to push, which are ultimately going to be stripping your rights and things like that. Don't you, let me see if I can find another example of this, because she didn't mention them before, but let me see if I can find. Oh, okay. So this is an example. I'm going to see if I can. Well, I'll just leave it like this. Yeah. Now we have Vosh's videos, which are a lot louder than what we were watching before. Conservatives love to take marginalized people like this, like Blair White. And this is Blair White here. She is a trans woman. Again, conventionally attractive, very good looking, pretty woman. And she's trans. And conservatives love to take this kind of person and act like they support her. But look at how they actually talk with her on a panel that she was on.
Reason to just if it keeps going back to like we need to win, I don't see the groups before that. Groups
Can I just
spent on the math national
Okay.
Lauren?
now over time they very well could.
Can I just let me move to Lauren?
900,000 votes. 900,000 people nationally came out from the LGBTQ community and voted for President Trump. We've done the math. It was absolutely not beneficial for all the money we spent when we could have been going after the working class, the white working class, the Christian.
Damn, this sounds like what I hear from those Nazbol types too. 900,000 is a lot. That's enough to swing.
God damn, Bosch has gotten a lot thinner since this. This was what, 2021? Just so you can see what I'm talking about real quick here. This isn't even about him or anything, but I just want to. This is actually a good example, especially for disaffected men, how much diet and exercise can help you out. Look at that difference. Look at him there. Damn.
States by far. Yeah, white working class, by the way. Subtle, by the way.
Christian working class. I do agree. Religiously, we spent way too many resources. So the lie that we have to be a big tent in order to win, and we have to be inclusive. Like I said, there is a party for free market capitalism and transgenderism and liberalism. That's called the Libertarian Party. Why don't you join them? We do not need you. You are doing nothing but hurting us. You are hurting the Christian vote by creating a platform for yourself saying, this is Trumpism. This is
Again, this.
So, and I think Bosch is actually about to get into this too, but we have this whole thing where this woman here, and I don't know who she is, I don't care who she is, Blair White down here is very conservative trans. Her whole narrative is essentially, oh, I'm trans, but I don't think other people should be. I think there's something wrong with me for being trans in the first place. When no, she might not even be alive if she wasn't trans, if she didn't get to actually fully, transition the way that she, kind of needed to for her mental health and different things. But moving on from that, the whole idea, she is basically licking the boot of people like her all the time. But this is how the conservatives that use marginalized people as props, how they actually feel about them and how they treat them in this Christian conservative battle, pro LGBT, yeah, so on and so forth, right? This was a panel they had to discuss. I guess it was a debate. I don't know. Yeah.
Logic is completely delusional. There are no Christian evangelicals who aren't voting for Trump right now because Trump is too pro LGBT, who would only vote for Trump if he was less so. This woman is delusional. I mean, just utterly lost.
Trumpism. We should have never glorified this in the first place. While we are losing everything on social issues, we lose every single time.
Split the vote.
We are influencing, public opinion matters, and we are influencing our own elected officials to not take a stand on issues such as transgenderism, LGBTQ education, drag queen story hour. They are saying nothing. We have created a...
Right. So the whole point is we have people, you're welcome to check out this video if you want. You're welcome to check out their original debate panel if you want, whatever. But the whole point is that you have people who, the conservatives will use people like Blair White as props for their narrative and all that stuff. But the second that they, get to go mask off and say, oh yeah, we don't like you, you're hurting our movement, you're not doing anything for our movement, etc., that is what happens. This is why we don't do identity politics. This is the problem with this narrative, this whole, oh, our society's full of hypocrites, oh, listen to a woman until she disagrees with the common narrative or what have you, all these different things. It's like, no, it's important what they're actually saying. It's way more important what somebody is actually saying rather than who's saying it. If you have somebody like Blair White, who is a trans woman, and they're debating somebody like Vosh or Zan or maybe Destiny, but I'm not too sure about that, and Blair White is going to say all this stuff about how terrible, transgenderism is and all that stuff, and, all this different anti-trans rhetoric, and then you have somebody like Vosh or Zan, not myself because I'm not much of a debater, but, you have one of these people, right, who are going to go and say and explain that they're going to actually show statistics and different things and things of that nature that are supportive of trans people, and Blair is just going to be a kind of attacking trans people with her rhetoric. It's way more important about who is saying it, or it's way more important what is being said rather than who is saying it.
Now they're free game. These are also the same people who say that they stand for trans people and believe in trans rights, unless of course that trans person is, say, a Blair White or a Buck Angel or
just exactly what I'm talking about.
Or a Caitlyn Jenner, or anyone who doesn't agree with their agenda. The same people who say that we need to have more women in charge because that would be better for societies, while simultaneously...
There's actually an entire meme on the progressive side of more female drone pilots, where it's a joke. It's like, it's the whole, oh, we need more female, bosses, we need more girl bosses, all that stuff. It's like, well, okay.
Being adamantly against the woman who's about to become the Prime Minister of Italy.
Okay, I'm not going to get into it. I am not going to get into the specifics, but holy shit, no The new one. Gloria Maloney. I would highly recommend just doing the research on this yourself because this is not exactly what I want to go into. But yeah, basically she has strong connection and holds much respect, we'll say, for Mussolini, who was, actually a fascist dictator. So she says yes to the natural family, no to the LGBT lobby, yes to sexual identity, no to gender ideology, no to Islamist violence, yes to secure borders, no to and by the way, anytime you have this whole like no to Islamist violence or anything like that, you're just saying like brown people are bad. That's the whole. It's just Islamophobia. It's not good. No to mass migration, no to big international finance, no to the bureaucrats of Brussels, so on and so forth, right? Yeah. So she is very much a far right wing. She was very supportive of Mussolini. Not when he was alive, obviously, but things like that. And yes, patience, Xena. This is why we don't do identity politics. This is why we don't say just because somebody is a woman or person of color that we immediately have to side with them and they're immediately in the right.
Because she believes in more conservative values. So all of this tells me that...
Yes, and just to be clear, I will use conservatism as a pejorative because I do view being conservative as inherently bad. Just to get into the specifics of it real quick, and I might have something where I discuss this more specifically in the future, but essentially, it really boils down to this. Conservatism is anti-change. Progressivism is pro-change. Not to say all change is necessarily good, but the idea of being conservative is just being anti-change, anti-evolution, and the way that people change and progress and the way societies develop and all that stuff, people and things naturally change. Conservatism is about fighting against such, and progressivism is about getting with the times and or making things better for the current and or next generation. And that is why conservatism is bad. So yes, just because somebody's conservative is a legitimate reason to go against them.
People who claim to care so much about women,
politicians and ideologues and stuff like that, not people, not your neighbor, your best friend, or your family member, just to be clear, all right?
Or ethnic minorities, or LGBT people, or men's mental health, don't really truly care about that because they're not very consistent. Because if you truly cared about these issues, then you should just care about the issues. Why do you only care about those issues when that person adheres to your ideology and your political perspective? Because the moment they don't agree with your political perspectives, then they're free game.
That is caring about the issues. Because if you're going to say, oh, I care about the issues of, say, like, LGBTQ people, I want them to have more acceptance. I have a trans brother and a non-binary sibling as well. I want them to be comfortable and accepted for who they are and not feel like they're, ostracized from society and things like that. I want them to be accepted, for example, right? So that's the issue. That's what I care about. I want them and people like them to be accepted. Therefore, if there's somebody that goes against that ideology, yeah, of course I'm going to take issue with that. That's how anything works.
You can disagree with Jordan Peterson and what he says or his politics and stuff. That's absolutely fine. If you disagree with it and you have counter arguments for the things that he says, that's fine. But it's just hilarious that the same people who claim to care so much about mental health and care so much about men fighting toxic masculinity and how men should feel more comfortable to express themselves emotionally and be able to cry will use that same vulnerability against that man if he does something that they don't like.
I'll bet you this woman is someone who claims that she's apolitical. I'll bet.
It's just so hypocritical, and I just can't take any of it seriously anymore. The same people who will terrorize you online are the same people who will put in their bio #BeKind. Or the same people who will say racial slurs against black conservatives are also the same people who put #BLM in their bio. It's funny. It's funny. But yeah, this was basically all I wanted to say. I'm just tired of people being full of shit. But that's it for this little rant. I just think it's funny how people who seem to think they're the most virtuous or the most morally superior and are on the right side of history are the most toxic and most venomous people, especially on Twitter. But that's all for this video. I hope you're having a good weekend. If you enjoyed.
All right. So, yeah, prime example. This is why we don't do identity politics. Is there a problem, optically and otherwise, with people who are keyboard warriors? Is there a problem with people who are activists and progressives that are spouting really harmful rhetoric about other people, regardless of what their class is or anything like that, right? Whether they're white, cis, het, gay, bi, pan, black, white, I said white already, Asian, Hispanic, whatever it might be, right? Are there people that will use other people's identities against them and things like that? Are there people who will just be absolutely vitriolic and hateful on Twitter, and yet they will claim that they're progressive? Absolutely. 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 I've talked before about how I'm a big supporter in things like not believe all women, but rather listen to all victims, things of that nature. I really like the idea trust but verify, many things like that. But inherently wanting to side with somebody just because of what their identity is, just because they're marginalized in some way, is not the way to go. She even talked about, work, like, focus on the issues rather than the people. Well, that's the exact opposite of what she's purporting, I'm not quite sure what the right word for that is, purporting. That's the exact opposite of what she's purporting here. You should focus on the issues, not who's saying the issues, who's talking about the issues, but what the issues are and what they are saying about them. Look, I'm sure there are things that she's correct about. I'm sure there are things that people like Candace Owens are correct about, and Jordan Peterson, and who's that podcast guy? Joe Rogan. And all of these people that have kind of moved further right, I'm sure there are things that they are correct about, but there are also things that they are incorrect about. I've talked before about how I don't agree with everything that even people like some of my favorite content creators, like Vosh, for example, agree with. I don't agree with his take on things like neo-gender pronouns or kind of the death of gender altogether, things like that. But that just because I don't agree on some things doesn't mean I hate them as a person. And I want to be clear, I don't hate people like even Jordan Peterson or Candace Owens or Blair White. I think that they are confused, they are misguided, they're being taken advantage of. Kanye West is another recent example of this as well. A lot of these people will end up in these situations where they are just taken advantage of by conservatives who are actively fighting against changing things for the better. To make it simple, at the end of the day, conservatism is about fighting against change, fighting against letting things get better and taking their natural progress of evolution, and progressivism is about making those changes in place. Conservatives will always use the line, well, aren't things good enough now? No, things are never good enough. There will always be room for growth, always room for positive change. And thinking that somebody like me, a cishet white male, needs to shut up just because a trans person or a black person or a woman or anything like that is speaking, I completely disagree with. And I think the concept of identity politics in and of itself is one that only leads to ruination for everybody. But, as always, guys, these are just my thoughts. Please, let me know what yours are in the comments down below. Subscribe and ring the bell to stay up to date. Leave a like if you like. If not, I would find something to do like. Follow me on social media as well for more. My Twitter is there. Yes, it is a cesspit, but I try to be pretty, nuanced and keep an open mind with things that I talk about and all that good stuff. So, check that out if you want. Otherwise, I hope you guys take care. Later. Peace and love.